what injury risk mitigation strategies actually look like. So we talked a lot about theory. Well, we started half an hour ago talking about injury profile. What is injuries? What causes injuries? And then how do we try and reduce injuries and all those the pyramid theories. But what does it actually look like in practice? Because that's the interesting bit. How do we take the theory and how do we apply it? So those of you that have been into professional companies, you'll understand that all companies nowadays are investing heavily in strength and conditioning equipment. This is our gym at Scottish Ballet. We also have gyrotonics and Pilates equipment as well, but it is very much, we have a significant strength and cardiovascular portion to the gym. And all companies are doing that. They're trying to improve strength, cardiovascular capacity, motor control, and we're using strength and conditioning experts as well. This is one of our dancers doing a trap bar deadlift with our strength and conditioning coach. So our dancers and professional companies, they get quite a lot of support from professionals. But at the same time, at Scottish Ballet, we're really big on the word autonomy and getting our dancers to be autonomous and taking responsibility and being independent. And so we also provide them with some materials that they can use independently to get on with over Christmas and over things like lockdowns. So here's an example of some of the programs we use. We have a lower foot ankle program with calf raises and seated calf raises, some intrinsic work for the intrinsic muscles of the foot. What's interesting about this is based off some of Sue May's research from the Australian Ballet, and they found that when their dancers completed 24 calf raises, single leg calf raises every day, their injury rates dropped by about 60%, 60. That's a significant amount, and so that just goes to show the importance of just very, very simple strength work in dance and the importance of it, amongst other things. And on the right, here's an upper limb physical preparation program for some of the boys, particularly. Very, very simple, but very, very effective. Some of the most effective interventions are actually the simplest ones. Okay, and that's sometimes the hazards. And I'm going to go off on a little bit of a ramble here about Instagram, but sometimes we see on Instagram all these fancy exercises with BOSU balls and funny weights and stuff like that, but very often you can't beat just going back to the basics of a calf raise and a basic push-up just to build some general strength. Okay, so this is what some of the injury risk mitigation strategies look like. So there's a combination of both, in stuff delivered by professionals, by myself and the rest of our team, but also we expect our dancers, because they're professionals, to undertake very, very simple, self-directed, autonomous injury reduction strategies. So I'm going to talk you through an example of the application of everything we've talked about. This is a real example. None of this is made up. This is 100% real. Okay, and I'm going to take in a little bit of a story here. So we had a 26-year-old male first artist, and this is the interesting part of ballet is, and it's important to understand that the hierarchy, okay, moving through the hierarchy, going from an artist to a first artist to a soloist to a principal, because it's all well and good me telling the dancers, well, look, if you do this, you're going to be a better dancer, or you're going to get injured less often. They are interested in that, but ultimately, they want to rise through the ranks in their career. They want to get the best roles, and they want the recognition from their peers and from their artistic director. So it's really important to take into account what happens in terms of the hierarchy, in terms of how does their career pan out. So going back to the 26-year-old male, he started in July 2018, and he was touted for promotion. Everyone was talking about it, saying, oh, so-and-so is definitely going to get promoted. And he missed out on that promotion. He was told he was too inconsistent, okay? He did have frequent shoulder injuries from partnering. He basically wasn't strong enough. And it was actually, I remember it, we were in Macau, which is near China, and we were walking back from the theatre, and he said, Martin, I want to try this S&C thing that you keep talking about. So we went for it. He understood the need to change physically, both in his aesthetic and his durability. So his aesthetic was good. He was a strong guy, but he could have had a bit more lean muscle mass on him. He could have been a little bit stronger, a little bit bigger, and he could have been a bit more durable. So we worked together. We did very, very simple, as I said in the last slide, very, very simple strength training, but the consistency was the key. We did things like this, like a trap bar deadlift. So just picking something heavy off the floor and putting it back down again. Then we did something like you can see this chap on the right doing a landmine overhead press. So just pressing something overhead, and we just got strong. We just got very, very simple. We did these 2 simple exercises 3 times a week. Every time we did it, tried to do it a little bit more in terms of the weight. And in February 2019, so less than 6 months, well, about 6 months later, he was promoted to soloist. Okay, and his physicality had changed. He was in fantastic shape. He was far more confident. He never got injured. I used to know this guy really well because I used to see him a lot. He was always in my room injured, and now I just know him as more of a friend because he never gets injured, touch wood. And he continued. He found the recipe, and he continued with this recipe. And in December 2020, he was promoted to principal, which is as good as it gets. So within 18 months, he'd gone from being rejected for a promotion, stuck in the corps de ballet. The one thing he changed was his application of an injury reduction protocol to try and reduce the amount of shoulder injuries, to reduce his inconsistency, but also to improve his physical performance and his aesthetic. And I saw it in terms of the fact that he wasn't getting injured, but most importantly, his peers and the artistic side of our company recognized it and awarded him promotions through it. And his work with our team was noted during his 2 promotions as well. So that's the proof in the pudding. That's just one example. I could go through many examples, but it's just one example of how very, very simple but consistent strength and conditioning can not only reduce injuries, but it can actually really help your artistic performance. Okay? So, final thoughts. You've hung in there. You've listened to me for the last 40 minutes. Thank you very much. But if this is the one slide that I really want you to take away, okay? So injury incidents, that's the number of new injuries you get, should account for exposure. That's really, really important because this allows for comparison. So what I mean by exposure is when I talked about 1 injury per 1,000 hours of dance or 80 injuries per 1,000 hours of gymnastics. It allows a direct comparison, okay? In a sentence, the majority of injuries in the performing arts are overuse in nature. So what I mean by that is they do not have a discrete mechanism of injury. They just build up over time, and they involve the lower leg. Okay, it's really important to understand that we cannot prevent injuries, but we should look to reduce them. So try and use the word injury reduction over injury prevention. Okay, injury reduction is multifactorial. If you see people talking about the one thing that they need to do to reduce injuries, be very suspicious. There's many facets to injury reduction, as you can see from the pyramid. Load management, remember the bucket. Physical preparation, remember the example of the now principle. Technique is very important. Do not forget culture. Create that environment where people feel safe and are able to report injuries and get better. And training load. Training load, when managed correctly, is actually protective. It's actually a really healthy thing. It's very hard to manage in ballet. Here's some references for you. This is where all the facts and the figures came from, apart from the Scottish Ballet data, which is my own. But all the facts and figures. This is all the research here. If I'm going to direct you to 2 things that may help, these are the 2 things. One's a book and one's a podcast. Okay, and the first thing is there's a new book. It was published last year, Injury Prevention and Management for Dancers. It was written by a guy called Nick Allen, who is my equivalent down at the Birmingham Royal Ballet, and he's been there for 15 years. I've got this book, and it's really good. It's really good because it's straightforward. It's simple. It's not complex, and it's less than 200 pages, which is always a good thing. So if you are interested in learning a bit more about the different types of injury you can get, a bit more about the anatomy, it's a good text to go and check out. And I think it's only about 14 quid. It's not expensive. One thing I'm a big fan of is podcasts. I like to consume things by listening to them. And one of the sort of big podcasts in my industry is called Physio Matters. And episode 83 was published about a month ago. So again, very, very recent. And it was all about the performing arts with a physio called Liz Bailey. And I sat there and I listened, and I thought it was really interesting, and it gives you a really nice overview of the kind of injuries people get, why they get them. And Liz is actually more into the musical theatre side of things, so it kind of gives you a little bit different perspective of working the West End and things like that. So these are sort of two resources that, if you are interested in what I've been talking about, I encourage you to go check it out.